I've used it, you've probably used it in the garden, but has it done some damage and wasted some time? Let's talk about something that you could fix so easily, but you may be doing it in the garden, and I have done it in the garden, but it's either killed your plants or slowed your plants down, and we could change it with just one important step. Come with me and we'll talk about everything to do with mulching, composting, and using potting mixes, seed raising mixes, and all of those things, and the biggest mistake that you can make. Today's a very dark, dull, wet day, so I've come inside to share from my office and talk about something that I'm hoping it will help you a lot, actually, because I kind of wish I'd known this at the start. It would have saved me a lot of time, money and effort, and it's taken me quite a few years to work this out. So we will be talking about everything from mulching, potting mixes, soils, and approaches to using compost that may be recommended but not necessarily worked. So I want to share with you my experiences with these things and my frustrations with them and what I've done and where I've landed. So I feel like I'm in a place now that I'm seeing what's working in my garden and in my pots. I'm hoping this will save you a lot of trouble. So let's get into it. That's what they say. Let's get into it. So we're all snuggled up because it is freezing cold and windy and all sorts of things outside. So I was sitting there thinking about my recent relief and success with what to use when I'm potting up and in the garden, and thinking about how my garden has reacted to mulching and compost and so forth. And there's been quite a lot of recent things that I've noticed because some things take time before they kick off. So I want to share that with you. I want to start with the very first topic of mulching. What I have discovered with mulching is that everything matters with mulching. It does help a lot in your garden to mulch, and I'll go into that, but it does matter how you mulch and what you use. Mulching supplies that I have used have been economical options because my budget has not allowed for expensive things anyhow, so I have tried things on small scale or gone all out on the cheaper options. So we have used bush mulch extensively, which is the mulch that's taken from the side of the roads. I'm in Australia, it's mainly gum trees and leaves and things from the side of the road, and you can usually pick it up for free or much cheaper than other mulching options. I have used it for trying to suppress weeds in paths, but I've also used it in the garden, and I have used it in the vegetable garden. And a lot of people will say do not use it in the vegetable garden, and a lot of people will say that chipped mulch will rob your soil of nitrogen. Now, this is what I understand, and this is what I have observed. I do not dig the mulch into the soil. When you dig mulch into the soil, it robs the soil of not just nitrogen as it's breaking down, but it robs it actually of oxygen. So your plants need oxygen near their roots, and if you put it into the soil, then you are setting your plants up for a struggle, and you're setting your plants up for root rot and all sorts of other things. So I have not dug it into my soil. I've always put it on top. Usually I've put cardboard or newspaper down and then put it on top of that, or I've topped up with it. And I have found it breaks down approximately 12 months. Most of it breaks down in 12 months. We also use it in our chicken pen, and it breaks down within months because they turn it over and pretty much compost it down, and then we take it out of there half composted before we freshen up the chicken pen, and it absorbs a lot of moisture and their manure and everything. So that's a separate other thing. But just your plain mulch, when I put it down, I put it down on top of the surface. Now, I have made the mistake in an area that was already anaerobic, which means the water it repels water. The soil was it was hard pan clay soil, which is, we've got clay all through here, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Clay is actually full of a lot of minerals, but it can be tricky with water. Water doesn't like to penetrate, it kind of compacts together, and water is tricky without some sort of other thing in the clay. Now, my front garden area was shaded out by two massive gum trees. So this is right in the front of my house, and the gum trees were robbing everything around it of everything, water, nutrients, and they do actually, eucalypts do actually inhibit growth under them too. So I struggled to get that garden going, and I have got it going. But I did use mulch because in the past I knew that mulch worked for most things. Now, the mulch I put down pretty heavy, thinking I was doing a good thing and thinking the more mulch the better. That was an error, because if the mulch is too deep, then you have the same issue with water penetrating down into the soil, and the microbes and everything that's going to work that mulch into the soil, turn it all into soil and put the goodness and all the activity, it was too deep. So when I use the pine mulch, I generally just go about, at the most, maybe 3 inches, 4 inches. If it's a path, I'll go a bit thicker. But on the garden, from 2 to 3 inches, maybe, 4 is pushing it. So just not too much. You just need to cover the soil pretty much and have a little bit extra. I mean, a couple inches is plenty. So I would recommend it, and I would recommend it for the vegetable garden. I did not notice any robbing of nitrogen, and apparently it's a little bit of a myth. Like I said before, it's robbed if you dig it into the soil. If you're sitting it on top, there's this tiny layer that it's working, that's been working right where it meets the soil, and there might be a little bit of nitrogen loss temporarily until it breaks down, but then it's all restored again. So it's not something to be worried about. I wouldn't put it up against a plant stem, keep it away from the plant a bit, but otherwise it's been fine. In fact, my vegetables I have grown in the decomposed mulch, after about 6 months maybe, have absolutely thrived. I do use manure with it, so I have either used a little bit of the manure out of our chicken coop, or I have used the pellet manure, which I do believe helps with growth, but the mulch itself has been fantastic. The other mulch I use is sugarcane mulch because it's organic and there's no herbicides and pesticides. So I stay away from anything that's got herbicides and pesticides. And so I would recommend you don't use anything that's not organic, that has potential herbicides or pesticides, because there have been a lot of growers that have bought in mulch thinking they're doing the right thing and have done it for a long time, and there's been excess of those in it, or the wrong broadleaf herbicides and stuff, and it's just killed all their tomatoes, or it's caused issues. I mean, we don't want to be digesting it anyhow when we eat our food, but yeah, it's sugarcane mulch, this is what we can get here, sugarcane mulch, and I have used the pea straw before. So, but it is tricky to get hold of products that aren't contaminated. And speaking of contamination, I'll move on to the next topic, which is the bagged mixes that we get, the potting mixes and composts and seed raising mixes and all of those. So this is has been my biggest area of frustration. Since the 1980s, the industry had decided to put bark into these mixes. They're pretty much, a lot of them are mulched up wood. And once upon a time, the soil that the farmers grew in were either clay, or they were some kind of sand mix, sandy loam or whatever, which both of those the plants are agreeable with certain growing conditions. Both of them are very different to each other with water retention. So clay will hold water for months. Sandy soils need constant watering, so it's a whole different ballgame between the two. But wood was never meant to be a growing medium. The wood that you experience in the natural is slowly decomposing wood on the top surface of the ground. Now, in a forest situation or a natural situation, things tend to look after each other, like the trees, and everything seems to be fine without our intervention, as we can observe. In the garden, we seem to be having to look after everything. Well, we can negate that a lot by mimicking nature to a degree. So we don't have as much time as nature has, but we can work with that to a degree. Now, in nature, leaves and sticks and things fall to the ground, and animals put their manure on it, and things die on it, bugs and that die in it, and that organic matter breaks down together slowly, and the microbes and that activity is a natural process, and the fungi and all of that. Now, with plants, we see diagrams of, say, trees, and some, old diagrams will show like the head of a tree, and then underneath the ground, they show this like a mirror image of the root system. But in actual fact, plants don't go all that deep into the ground in general, because they need oxygen, and some plants need more oxygen than others. So they tend to grow within, say, about a foot or not much more of the soil level. So if you are putting broken up wood and that into the soil, you're disrupting that growing layer and disrupting it in this way. When wood is put into the soil, like I said before, it needs oxygen to break down. So it robs that area of a lot of oxygen. Well, the plant also needs that oxygen in its roots to grow healthy. So if it's competing with the wood, then it's competing. And that is where the problems lie. If it's on the top level and there's only a certain amount of it, the roots of the plants are happy, they've got enough oxygen. And that's where water can interfere too. If there's too much water, it also robs the roots of oxygen, and that's when things can go wrong as well. So it's getting that level of enough water or enough moisture kept in, and plenty of oxygen for the roots, or adequate oxygen for the roots. And as some of you may also be aware of, look at the grow bags. Grow bags work in that when you put a plant in there, a large plant that would normally throw its roots right out, it will actually stop at the bag, because once it reaches the air, the roots are not going to grow. So if a root area is robbed of oxygen, they're not going to grow properly, are they? Or the plant will die. So with all the potting mixes that are just full of bark, it's not you that's killing your plants. Some are more tolerant than others, and some just will not grow in them. Now, I've seen an increase of the bark content and contaminants in there, bits of, rocks, glass, all sorts of stuff entering our potting mixes. And when you sift it out, there's very little fine material even. It's quite coarse. A lot of them are quite coarse bark material that is far from decomposed, which is going to just compete with the plant. So that has been my frustration with the potting mixes, and I have tried so many different brands, and a lot of brands that used to be good are terrible now. So it's been tricky to find anything. Now, I have recently come across some products, Australian products, that I'm testing at the moment. So I won't mention them, but they're looking rather promising. However, putting that aside, my recommendation is to try and use soil as much as you can for your plants, and use that kind of thing treat it like mulch for your plants. Otherwise, it's just more difficult to regulate the water and the air for them. You've just got to do more work, and some things will not grow in them. They just won't. Some things will, but they won't grow as well as if they had actual soil to grow in. So that's my beef with that. Now, I've also found even with the soil raising mixes, we've had changes in mixes too because of the peat moss issue, the sustainability of that. Now, peat moss doesn't compete with the air for the plants, so peat moss was a safe option to use like that. The coconut core the coconut pith seems to work okay too from what I've seen. Now, I haven't looked right into that, but it seems to be working as well for things like raising seedlings and stuff. And so you can add your worm teas and stuff into it for a bit of nutrient while they're growing. But so far, I have not found the seed raising mixes that you buy all that great. And they do vary from very fine mixes, but they're very temporary solutions for your seedlings. Your seedlings can only last so long in there. They don't need a feed when they're germinating and that, but once they get so big, they actually need some sustenance. But I'm on the bench with the seed raising mixes at the moment, but my beef with them is more and more of them are becoming bits of bark, and they're not even fine enough for seeds to push through. They're big pieces that when you sift the bag out, you get a whole lot of bark in there that would have been interrupting the seed's movement. It needs to be able to push up out of we're calling it soil, but it's not soil, but out of the medium to grow. So that is a tricky thing. So right now I'm just working with a bit of mixes at the moment to test something else. But yes, they are getting worse in the quality. So it's really important now to be growing your soil, getting your composts going, and building your own soils wherever you can, and organically if you can. On to, I just mentioned it, compost. Let's talk compost. Now, there's lots of different ways of composting, and I'm not going to go into that today. I'll briefly touch on what I've got here, but I want to talk about how to actually apply the compost. Again, compost is at different levels decomposed. So gardeners are putting compost into their gardens at different decomposed levels. So some are more decomposed than others. And they are either hot composting or cold compost. That's all very different end products. But in general, with your compost, again, if there's material in it that's decomposing, it's best not to dig it, in my opinion, it's best not to dig it all the way into the soil. It's still a good idea to put it up the top and let the worms and everything else do what they do best, what they do much better than we do, and let it be a natural process that the plants will adapt to, in my opinion, much better than if we go mixing it in. I don't know if there's all that much harm mixing a little bit into the topsoil, like a little bit in the top, scratching it in, but I wouldn't now mix it all the way in. And I actually don't think I've done that much anyhow. And I've been really surprised in the condition of my soil when I thought my beds would be depleted after season growth with not a lot of inputs other than mulching and other than putting things on the top, that the soil is so good and has improved so much over the few seasons that I've had my garden going, my vegetable garden going. So my recommendation is to think about that. Your plants still need the oxygen, the water, these mulches and the compost, and that's keep that in. Compost is best to be protected by the mulch. So you put your compost down a little bit first. You don't need a lot. Put the compost down and then put the mulch over top to keep that protected. Keep the microbes and all the rest of it protected from the sun and the wind, and let that be a natural process going into your garden. So that's how I'm approaching it religiously now, because I started to think, well, I don't ever dig it in, maybe I should dig it in. And then after a more research, it just makes sense why it's been working so well with my garden not to do that, and why I haven't had to put a lot of inputs in. I could put more inputs in, and I'm actually putting more stuff on the top, amendments on the top, if you like. They're not even they are amendments, but I'm actually adding to my soil, adding more activity to my soil by adding rock dust and things like that now. But I'm not mixing it in. I'm watering it in, but I'm not mixing it in. I'm still relying on that natural process, and I try to religiously have that soil covered, whether it be with small layer of mulch or plants growth. I try to cover the soil. I know that that's really important. Now, if you have really, really sandy soil, which I don't have, and I don't have experience with it, so I'll just put that out there. It does need something, excuse me, it does need something to hold the moisture in. So I don't think it'd be too harmful to dig some sort of compost into that small top layer, and then mulch, and then let the worms and everything do their business from there. I still would recommend you test how far to dig that organic matter in, and try a couple of plants side by side under same conditions, same size plants, and see, or even if you grow things by seed, or try maybe 3 side by side and see the difference by doing that, and see if it does affect your plants. It's going to be less probably obvious because the sand will allow more air in than, say, clay soil. So it'll be less obvious than clay soil. But yeah, I would recommend you just test that for yourself, because like I said, I don't have really super sandy soil here. I have some sandy loam throughout the garden, but I'm working with clay soil here. Mostly on the ground level clay soil, and I recently bought in a garden mix that's got sand in it. It's got mushroom compost in it. You know, it's got a few things. It's meant to be aged, but I'm not sure how. I have no control over that system, so I don't know how aged it is. It looks pretty aged to me, but it's also got bits of glass and things in it, so I don't know. So I'm still treating it with the same approach that I treat my clay soils, by adding things to the top of it, and I'm not digging things in it. And the other recent thing that I've been looking at is the way the roots form inside pots and when you're growing seedlings and that. And also when you're putting barriers around your plants. And recent information, and this could be or couldn't be correct, I'm just going by observation, and one of them by other people's experience, but I was about to put some surrounds around my grapes to contain them because I have a weed issue. So I was about to put some round little beds around them, make them. And I was considering, should I dig them right in deep or not? Now, this is the already established plant that has its root system, which I will not be disturbing. So it would have gone out from the plant the way it needs to go. It's had the whole yard to do whatever it wants in there. So I'm talking about my grape. So I would not have gone too deep because I wouldn't have upset the roots, and I would have just given it a bit of top dressing on the top and contain that. I'm doing it so I can weed around the plant, brush cut up to it, because that area is now being given over to the strongest and the fittest, which has been the weeds there, not me. So that's what I've done. But I see other people putting these round garden beds and planting the plants into them, the trees into them. And I was thinking, should I do that with some new fruit trees that are coming? Should I put them in that? I've decided temporarily I'm going to put them in the grow bags, because like the roots will grow out and kind of stop there. And then if I ever need to shift them again and put them in the ground, they'll grow out from there. But apparently if you put something in a round garden bed and it's metal, say, or plastic or whatever, the roots will hit the edge and start to go round and round and round and round, and that's not good for the plants. So that's just one thing to keep in mind if that's something you're considering. And I'm just sharing it because it's something I've avoided now, and it might be useful to know for you. With seeds, with little seeds, seed raising things, I noticed the ease and dis-ease of getting them out of little containers and the things that we grow our seeds in. And recently I bought some seedlings from my friend Sarah at I'll just put it on the screen, in Seville, and she's growing in the seed trays that are shaped like a cone. And the way they come out of that was so easy. The way they pull out, there was just no force on the plant. They pull out really easy. It makes it really easy for transplanting them. But not just that, the way the roots formed seemed to be really healthy, the way they were forming. And I had a good look at all the roots when I picked up my seedlings from there. And I thought, that's what I need to be doing. I need to be using those, I think, when I grow my seeds. And so I would recommend you look into that shape, cone shape, seed raising trays. And so the root system is important on the plants from babies right through, particularly once they start to meet the barriers that they're growing in. It's important to shift them in time, but if they don't get shifted in time, it's important that they're in the right containers so that if there's a bit of delay, it's not so bad. So it was a bit of a ramble, but I hope that was informative to you. If you enjoyed that, this is very different to my other videos, although not that my videos are all the same. They're very different. You know, some of them are more meditative music, and some of them I chat to you, and some of them I voice over, and you know, some of them like are more active, and some of them are in the garden doing the stuff, talking about it. So it's all of them are journeying through all the different aspects that I'm doing. And homesteading, you know, there's not a lot of cooking ones on there, but they're coming because that's something I've been really wanting to share with you. I've got some recorded, some in editing process now, but I'm putting my favorites out there. Like, I'm just going to give you my favorites, the most valuable things to me, because I haven't got time to show you everything, and there would be a video every day and I just wouldn't have time to do that anyhow. But look forward to that. If that's something you enjoy, please like, subscribe, and engage with me. That helps my channel, helps me. I'm just a little person trying to get out there, help other people, and honestly, I'm trying to engage and connect with my people, so my tribe. So it's hard to find people that are doing what you're doing and understand, and that are nice, that are, just want to help and encourage each other. And yeah, I'm not perfect. I'm growing, learning all these things, making mistakes, learning as I go, sharing what I did and didn't do right and wrong. And hopefully the people that are on the other side of the screen, you guys, can appreciate that. So my humanness. Right. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.